Welcome to episode 34 of the Sports Geek podcast. On today's episode, I chat with Leigh Ellis from NBA TV's The Starters on producing killer podcasts that help them break into the NBA. And we tap in with Kenton Olsen from the Seattle Seahawks as they prepare for the NFL's NFC Championship game.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who uses hashtags in emails and texts, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. I actually use hashtags also in Christmas cards and birthday cards. Welcome to another episode of Sports Geek Podcast. It's been a busy week here at Sports Geek, and if you're in Melbourne, we are going through a heat wave for those out of Melbourne. If you're watching the Aussie Open, I can attest that it is bloody hot. I do hope that Kim, Dan and the rest of the Tennis Australia digital team have installed air conditioners in the social shack that we discussed on episode 30. It definitely is a hot one here in Melbourne, and we do love to complain about how hot it is when it does get a little bit hot. But it is over 40 for the third straight day, and that's over 100 in Fahrenheit for the people in the US. Big podcast today. I've got Leigh Ellis from The Starters talking about the content that they've produced prior to joining NBA Digital and NBA TV crew. And then I'm lucky enough to fit in with Kenton Olsen's busy schedule as they prepare for the NFC Championship game and talk about an activation they've got with the Seahawks connecting fans around the world. One quick word to mention, our SB night, our Sports Business Networking night, on next Tuesday, the 21st, at the Honey Bar. You can grab tickets, sportsgeekhq.com/SB night. Again, thanks to James Spinks and Interplay Media. Thanks to their kind sponsorship, we're able to offer everybody a free drink upon entry. Now, here's my chat with Leigh Ellis from The Starters. Okay, very happy to welcome a special guest to the Sports Geek podcast today. You may know him as the Australian fact checker from NBA TV's The Starters, but as he picked E-Dog as his jersey nickname, that's what I'll call him throughout this podcast. Welcome, Leigh Ellis.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for having me.
So for those who don't know about The Starters, formerly it was known as the Basketball Jones, and you and the TBJ crew were brought into the NBA Digital family, and now you're in Atlanta. How's the move from Toronto to Atlanta gone a few months in?
Well, overall, not too bad. From a family standpoint, moving my wife and our young son here, that was quite hectic, of course, but now we're sort of settled in, we're feeling a little bit more at home now, and so that always makes a difference when you sort of can feel that you're sort of out of your backpack and you've unpacked everything. And from a professional standpoint, now we're up to nearly 40 shows that we've done. Obviously, at the start, the first few shows, there's a few teething problems, and everyone's sort of not quite sure about the format and how things are going to work, but really, in the last couple of weeks, we feel we've got a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more confident, and overall, it seems to be going quite well.
So for those who don't know, get just a little bit of backstory with the Basketball Jones. You did over 1,000 episodes in various forms, so it wasn't always a podcast for a little while there. Yep. It was a TV show. Do you want to give us a little bit of background of what TBJ was and how you sort of ended up joining that crew?
Yeah, well, it was nearly 8 years ago to the day when Skeets, Tass and JD, who were the original three, just got started doing a podcast. And they originally did it on Skype, kind of like what we are right now. JD recorded it in his basement, and they sort of put it up on iTunes, and they had some success. They were only doing it really once or twice a week at the start, and then gradually they just started doing it 3 times a week, and then it built up to a 5-day-a-week thing. And again, it was a lot of interaction with fans. This is kind of before Twitter and Facebook and that had really taken off as well. So there wasn't the same sort of instant
gratification,
that there is now. And, the guys just seemed to build up a loyal following. They took a different approach. I mean, it was never the same sort of analysis type show. It was always looking at the league in a different way and always trying to add a little bit of colour and a bit of insight that is not normally there. And then Matt came along and joined the guys. He went to school with the guys earlier in the 2000s, and then they hooked up again when Matt finished what he was doing at school. Trey and Skeets kind of knew each other because Skeets used to write at Ball Don't Lie for Yahoo on their basketball blog, and so they sort of had a relationship there in the past. And then they joined The Score in 2010, I believe it was, and and I was already working at the Score, which is a television network in Canada, a sports TV network. And so I just started, I noticed what they were doing, and I tried to get involved with them and tried to sort of see where I could help out. And they started to use me to do a couple of things, just minor things, helping out, shooting a couple of shows and doing a few things when JD was busy. And then gradually the relationship just kind of grew and grew. And then it was the lockout season of 2011, when the guys basically needed something to do. And so they decided to go on the no season required tour, which basically we went around America for 34 days into 9 different cities and just did a live podcast. And at the time, I wasn't officially a member of the crew, but they basically needed someone to carry their bags and get their coffee in the morning, and they offered that spot to me. So I pretty quickly jumped on it, and so we went around America in November of 2011. And when we came back, it was really perfect timing, because while we were on the tour, I think we were in Miami, and it was around Thanksgiving weekend when the NBA announced that they had an agreement and they were going to come back starting on Christmas Day. So when we got back to Toronto, I was obviously keen to continue working full time with the guys, and they felt that they could use me in some way other than getting their coffee. So basically from there, then I started working full time, and then again my role has expanded throughout the time I've been there, from basically again doing sort of behind the scenes production work to then being involved in the Overdose, which was Friday's show, and then again as last season progressed, I was more involved in the Daily Show in a minor on air capacity, and then when we made the move to NBA TV this year, I became one of the 4 guys on the panel.
And so, I do think it's funny. I've seen some of the tweets that you guys have been getting this season for the people who didn't know you, and they sort of just feel like, who are these guys? Why have we got a couple of Canadians and an Australian on NBA TV? It just sort of shows you the hard work you have to put in to break into the sports business. So you were just pretty much you've got a background, and you were doing tennis reporting, and also you're working at the Score, doing a lot of web content and associate producer type stuff before you even got close to doing stuff with the guys?
That's right, yeah. Some people who don't know us, like you mentioned, sort of think that we're just 4 guys that were walking along the street one day and someone said, hey, come and do a show on NBA TV. But, as you mentioned earlier, the guys, I haven't been a part of all 1,000 episodes before they went to NBA TV, but, it was a process that really started, so long ago, and they just had to keep doing it and doing it and doing it for free until someone noticed. And that's the same with me. Like, I was working in a bank here in Toronto, and I didn't really like it, and so I tried to change my career. And fortunately, what happened in Toronto was a sports media college open, so I enrolled into that, and it wasn't cheap. But then that gave me my little window into getting a foot in the door in the sports industry. And then again, once I was in the sports industry, you've got to be pretty much prepared to do anything, and that's how it was for me. And then when the opportunity with the guys came along, I really, again, you don't want to do something that someone else can do. You always want to try to bring something new to the table. And having an accent obviously helps, but I wanted to show the guys I can do more than just sort of produce from behind the scenes. I have sort of an opinion on things as well. And I guess it's just one of those things that it takes time, and you can't just sort of put 3 or 4 guys in a studio together and expect to have a great podcast straight away. Things build up over time. Chemistry takes a long time to build up, and you just have to know how each other work, and just getting to know each other. It's like any sort of relationship, I guess, like that. There's always there's that getting to know you period, and then you start feeling more comfortable with each other. So, if anyone's interested, the only advice I would say is you just have to pick up some sort of recording equipment, whether it's a microphone or a camera, and you have to do it every single day, and don't expect anything to come, straight away. It took a long time. Like I say, it took 8 years for us to get to NBA TV or for the guys, and if it wasn't for them doing it at the start every single day. JD as well, the main producer, had 2 babies while this was happening. And the stress that a baby has on any sort of relationship, and he was still able to produce to the quality that they had done to that point was incredible, really. And, JD could have easily, no one, I don't think, would have blamed him if JD said, listen, I've got too many things to worry about here with my kids and my family. But he didn't. He kept at it, and it's paid off in the end. But, it's just one of those things, because that's the thing. People tweet us and they say, "Oh, these guys suck. I could do their job." And I say, "Well, okay, do it. You pick up a camera and you start recording every day at the same time. Make it good, make it interesting, and make it funny." And it's amazing how people, when they think about it, they realise that it's not like we just turn up at 11:30 in the morning, watch some highlights, and then we go and sit on a panel for an hour and talk about the games. I mean, there's a lot that goes into every single show.
Oh, don't dismiss the theatre of the internet. We like to think that you just turn up.
We like to think that that's what people think. We hope that that's the sort of show that we show that we are just turning up and we're casual and it's fun and it's engaging. But I mean, it's completely the opposite. I mean, basically, as soon as one show finishes, we're planning for the next one.
Yeah, we've been working with a few teams. I've really bought into podcasting as a real strong communication form for the teams, because you get to choose. Sorry, the fans get to choose when they listen to it. So whether it's a football team or a basketball team or whatever, it can be a preview show, it can be a review show, it can be insights, but. And from a production point of view, it's far easier to produce a half-hour podcast than is a half-hour TV show, just from the amount of moving parts that you need, and whether you're going to do editing and those kind of things. So I just want to take a lot of the stuff that we do is helping the teams produce shows, and we've got a few of our teams are actually going to dive in and do a few more podcasts as another content thing this year. Do you want to give us an idea if you just come out of a show meeting for tomorrow's show? What type of things do you discuss in there, and how do you plan it out? Is it a show-to-show thing? Is it do you have longer sort of theme shows planned out? Give us an insight into that kind of planning.
Well, Monday shows are always a little bit different, because basically we try to look at the weekend starting from Friday night, Saturday night and Sunday night. We try to just basically pick out winners or losers storylines. For example, Josh Smith last night, who's had a pretty rough week, he had a pretty good Friday and Saturday night. He had an incredible line on Friday night, and then he had the game-winning basket on Saturday night. So we'll focus on that. We won't necessarily break down the game as such.
Yep.
We'll just look at more storylines and talking points. And then, for example, the losers, we can look at something like the Washington Wizards last night that had the leak in the roof that delayed the game in total for about an hour. And we just try to point out those sorts of things, rather than, because you know how quickly things move on the internet. If we were to talk about a game on Friday night, on Monday morning, no one's really interested, because everything's changed since then. Sunday night's games might be interesting, and we may talk about one game if something spectacular happened, but that's generally Monday's show. And then throughout the week, we have a mailbag segment on Wednesdays. Tuesdays, we have like a crossfire segment where we basically just debate different topics. And that's really Skeets and Tass, and that's one of their old things that they've done from the start. We try to keep things so that each day there's something that the fans look forward to listening to.
There's a feature segment that that they know you're going to go to.
That's right. So that they know, if that's their favourite segment, or if they don't like that segment, they know whether to tune in or tune out for it. And, again, we try to keep things very similar from Tuesday to Friday, especially because that way then people know what's coming, and they know that if, let's say Monday night's game is the Heat versus the Thunder, and it's a triple overtime game. Well, we're obviously going to lead with that game the next morning. But let's say, for example, there's a game that we looked at and we thought the Heat and Thunder, that was going to be our lead topic on the next morning, but Miami blows them out by 35 points. We probably won't then talk about that game in depth as much. But let's say the Bobcats and the Sacramento Kings had an incredible game, then we'll probably incorporate that game into it. So we have a rough idea the night before what we're going to talk about, but it's always subject to change depending on the storyline and depending on what happens the night before. But, so the show, it goes up at 12 o'clock Eastern US time every day. It's live online on NBA.com. Then after the show, we sort of have a quick chat about things that we liked, things that we think worked, things that we thought maybe didn't work. And then then Matt and JD basically then edit the show for the TV version. So they might just trim things up a little bit if we talked a little bit too long, or they might just make a slight adjustment. There's generally not that many things, but There's always a couple of things they just need to tweak. And then pretty much we have lunch, and then we start talking about the next day's show, because we always want to find things like the segment we have about sort of 35 minutes through is called The Goods. where we're talking about just general talking topics, the Andrew Bynum trade and the Andrew Bynum free agent signing, where he's going to sign next, those sorts of things. If there's a controversy between a coach and a player or something like that, we try to bring those topics up then. And then, by the time we finish up for the day, it's basically 5 o'clock. I know that I come home, I have dinner, put Sebastian in the bath, put him to bed, and then the game starts at 7 o'clock, and you're kind of into it straight away again. So it's very hectic because between the six of us, we need to be on top of every major talking point, and we get most of them. There's always a couple that you sort of miss out on, but it's one of those things. I mean, I love the game of basketball, I enjoy it, but at the same time, I'm looking at it through different eyes now, because you're looking at it to try to find that you make sure you hit those talking points and you find anything that's of interest from the fans' perspective, whether or not it can be serious or it can be lighthearted, because that's the other thing. We always have after each game a segment called Random Notes, where we basically point out things that you might not have seen on the broadcast, and that's always great because fans are now really starting to tweet into us to say, hey, did you see, this guy did that, or something happened in the crowd, and we incorporate that into the show.
You just mentioned then Twitter. I think one of the reasons I wanted to chat to you and chat to you guys, because I think you do community development really well, which is what you would call it, but it really is just engaging your fans on Twitter. Do you think part of that is, I guess, starting 7 years ago, sort of in a pre-Twitter space when you would have been engaging via blogs, message boards, those kind of things, and then when Twitter really started taking off in 2009, 2010, and then when you're doing the lockout season, the fact that you can have that backwards and forwards with the fans, you have a regular segment with the army where you read out Twitter handles in an Australian accent, as Skeet says. How much importance do you put on that backwards and forwards that all of you do? All the guys have backwards and forwards with fans. While you're watching the games, like you said, people will be tweeting in random notes, or people will send you a tweet and say, hey, did you see this Instagram of Dwight Howard was bored, so he's dancing in his hotel room? That kind of stuff. How important has that been to, I guess, the development of TBJ and now the starters?
Oh, it's huge. It's so important because you always want to let the fans know that they're involved in the show. We never think that we see everything and we know everything, and often during the show, one of us might bring up a stat or a fact, and we might have it slightly wrong in the wording or something like that, and people will tweet in and say, well, actually, you got this wrong, and I love that, because I no one's perfect, and if you make a mistake, whether an intentional one or you got your research wrong or your fact wrong, it's always good for someone to say, hey, listen, this is actually what the score was or what the fact was, because it just shows that we want the fans involved in the show, and they do that throughout pretty much every show. I'll send out a tweet during the show to say, what do you guys think of this? Or, tell me your five favourite players who are left-handed or something like that. And it gets people watching the show, because then people love to see recognition. And at the end of the show, not always, but I try to read out at least one or two tweets that we get from the fans who are watching the show live and put their name up, put their Twitter handle up, and, people love seeing that. And, we don't do it just to sort of say, well, you'll get your name on TV. We do it to say, listen, you guys are contributing to the show. You're helping us make this show. And that's what's so important. I mean, during games, I try not to sort of keep my eye on Twitter too much, because sometimes, as I'm sure you're aware, you end up just watching Twitter and you can miss like a big segment of a game before you realise it.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a rabbit hole you can fall down.
Oh, exactly. And if you start a conversation, then, 3 or 4 people tweet in, and I always try to respond to people where I can, because I appreciate them commenting on a tweet that I've made or whatever like that. But, I know there's been times where I'm like, oh my God, I've missed the last quarter of basketball because I've just been sort of on Twitter here. So,
it's a professional hazard.
It is. It's so easy to get distracted by it, and that's why now I'm trying to take a bit of a different approach. I'm trying to sort of leave my laptop upstairs and just watch a game. But you've always got your phone on, and again, you just quickly, if there's a delay in the game or a commercial break, you can't help but just check Twitter to see what's happening. So, but overall, I mean, everyone there are people out there who know easily as much or more than some of us at basketball, and that's, to me, I want those guys contributing to the show. I mean, there are obviously people who watch games in the cities, like, let's say, for example, in Washington. There's fans there who watch every single game and every single play. Now, we don't see every single game and every single play, so you want them to contribute to the show because they might see something that we don't normally see, whether it's a rotation change or a substitution or something like that affects the game. It might have happened 3 or 4 games ago and we missed it, and then they can help. They can bring that to our attention. So I love it. I mean, there's always a few. You always get a few people who just want to try to bring you down and all that, but that's that you just have to ignore those.
You would know that. You've obviously told the boys that it's tall poppy syndrome, as we would call it in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I understand not everyone, our show's not for everyone, and I understand that, and not everyone has to love us and tweet compliments to us, but there are people who purely look to try to engage you in trying to criticise and be stupid. And, you just have to, unfortunately, put up with a bit of that. And sometimes I have a bit of fun back, but after a while you just think you're not making any progress with this person, because sometimes there's been people who have challenged me on an opinion or a stat, and they've been right, and I say to them, yeah, hey, you got that right, I was wrong. And no, they don't write back and say, yeah, see, I got you, you're dumb, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. All it is like any of us, you make mistakes. And like, for example, last week, I sent out a tweet. Bradley Beal wore number 23 in college, and the reason he wore it, he said, was because LeBron was 23 when he was growing up, not Michael Jordan.
Yep.
And so I sent out a tweet and said, Bradley Beal wears number 23 because it reminds him of LeBron, not Michael Jordan. What makes you feel old? My wording was wrong because he wears number 3 for Washington, not number 23. It was in college.
Yep. And
a guy tweeted in and say, hey, you got that wrong. Bradley Beal wears number 3. He wore 23 in college, and I said back, I said, "Yep, you're right. I mean,
it was just a context thing."
Exactly. But at the same time, I got it wrong, and it's out there. And I think it's always better to admit your mistakes rather than try to then say, "Well, no, but I meant to say this," or what. You said what you said and made a mistake, and no harm done. But
I think that's all right. I think again, the stuff that you guys have done. Developing your Twitter army is effectively the same thing that we do with all the sports teams. The fact that, if you've got fans tweeting in, cheering on, contributing, you want to acknowledge them, whether it's with a favoriting the tweet, retweeting it, replying back. I see it all the time when we're responding to fans, from a team account. They're absolutely jazzed, and you lock them in. And I think, follow the guys from the starters. I'll have Leigh's Twitter handle in the show notes, but just to see how they're going about connecting with them. Yeah. I guess the other part of it is, you're a massive NBA fan. What is it like working at NBA Digital? I mean, they're pretty switched on guys from all the products that they put out. Australia, I think, is the highest subscription rate to NBA League Pass, and pretty much a lot of the stuff that they do at NBA Digital is absolutely top notch. What's it like working in Atlanta at those offices?
It's amazing. I don't know if I can put it into words, really, because I was an NBA fan from when I was basically 10 or 11 years old, when we didn't even have, obviously there was no internet or cable TV back in the late 80s. And I used to get up in the mornings and watch NBA action when it was on Channel 10 at like 6:30 in the morning and stuff. And
you don't remember getting the late on ABC. You get an NBA game every now and again.
Oh yeah, that was it. I remember that started in '89, and I used to tape them. And sometimes the thing is, I think they tried to get it at 11 o'clock every Friday night, but they'd always bump it if something else came along. Andrew Denton's Live and Sweaty. I don't know if you remember that. That sometimes used to go late and put the NBA late, and I'd sometimes have the VCR set up to record at 11 o'clock, and if Live and Sweaty went 10 or 15 minutes over, I'd miss the game because of what time I'd have the tape ended to stop recording.
I was on ABC Grandstand just last week with Debbie Spillane, who used to be on Live and Sweaty, so I do remember the days.
So for me, that was where my sort of passion and love for NBA began, and to be now working for NBA TV and NBA.com really is incredible. And, the fact that we have one of the restrictions that we've had in the past working for the Score in Canada, we weren't able to use video footage because we weren't able to post it globally.
Yep.
So we had to use Getty Images and things like that. Now, and there's been times this year where I want to talk about Isaiah Thomas or a play from the 80s or something, and we get the video and we can play it. And it's incredible. It really is amazing to be in this position. And, I enjoy every single moment. And, it's hard work, though, as well. That's the other thing. I think that, again, people look at TV and think it's all glamorous and it's all easy, but it's the complete opposite. It's very, very hectic and it's a lot of hard work. And, trying to watch the league and cover the league as closely as possible when there's 30 teams and, some nights there's 12 or 14 games of basketball. It's very, very difficult to make sure that you're on top of every single storyline. And again, that's where the fans come in and that's where all the sort of teamwork from everyone else gets in. We try to make sure we cover everything. But, I'm up every morning basically at 6 o'clock and I'm not in bed before 11 o'clock at night usually. And, so it's exhausting and it's tiring, but obviously I wouldn't change anything.
You're living the dream.
Exactly. And to get to that position, I don't think anyone's dream job really is a sort of 10 till 2 Monday to Thursday type of job. You want to be in that position where it's demanding and it asks a lot of you because the rewards in the end are great.
So as an Australian in the US, do you still follow Australian sports?
Oh, yeah. Obviously, I watched the Ashes. I didn't watch it so much. I have it sort of like on the radio and stuff like that on the BBC. And I don't have the time to watch like AFL as closely as I'd like to, but I always know what's going on. And I do always watch the grand final. That's the one game I make an exception for because that's still something that I just love greatly. But things like the cricket generally, you follow the scores, and I try to catch highlights and things online, but I obviously can't sit there and watch 5 days of Test cricket anymore. But the good thing is with the internet and stuff now, you can catch up on AFL and you get all the highlights. And every sort of Sunday I watch AFL.com and just see what's happening and see who's performing well and things like that. But obviously I don't follow it as closely as I did when I lived in Melbourne.
Yeah. Oh, I do want to have a shout out here to Adam Warney, Warney DT on Twitter. They're following a similar path to you guys at TBJ.
Right.
They set up a website called Dream Team Talk, so it's all based around the AFL fantasy comp, and they do stacks of really great content and videos and podcasts and stuff, and I think the coming season they're going to be doing some of the fantasy coverage for AFL.com.au. So
right.
I was chatting with him recently, and yeah, they're definitely following in the TBJ's, I guess, footsteps into becoming official.
Yeah, great. Well, good luck to them because, that, again, I'm sure those guys have probably gone through, I don't know how long they've been doing it for, but, I'm sure there's been periods where they wonder if it's ever going to lead anywhere because I know that, particularly Skeets and Tass and JD in those early years, speaking to them a lot, they were like, you're doing all this and people enjoy it and stuff, but at the end of the day, you need to pay your bills and you need to get an income and they wondered if it was ever going to lead to anything. And, I guess that's another thing for anybody who's interested in starting. Don't think things are going to happen in the at the start. It takes a long, long time, and you've got to be consistent and you've got to be proactive in just trying to make sure you're always bringing something new to the game. And, it's not easy, that's for sure.
No, exactly. But it is just a matter of, and again, for the teams out there trying to figure out how they can do it, or if you're trying to crack into the sports business, it is about producing that content that the fans want. And the good thing is now you have got that instant feedback of social.
Yep.
So you can put it out there. You can develop a community around your content. And again, that's what Warney and the guys have done around Dream Team Talk. They've developed a fan base and they've got the page views. They've got the runs on the board. They've got the likes. And it's much easier to convert and to go to an AFL or an NBA and say, well, look, we've already got a product that works, the fans like. And it's much easier for them to pick up.
Yeah, if you're trying to, no one's going to accept you if you walk into the AFL office and say, "Hey, listen, me and my mate Johnny, we're really funny. Our friends think we're great.
Yeah,
we've done 5 shows. Have a listen to this." basically what companies want is the audience. If you've already got an established audience, that's proof that people do enjoy your content, people are listening, and again, it takes a while to build that up, and the way to build that up is to just be consistent and have something really every day, not necessarily Saturday and Sunday, but Monday to Friday. People want something new and fresh, and also they want something that they haven't heard or they can't hear anywhere else.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm always pushing to the teams, because they've got access to the players, whether it's an NBA team, that we've spoken to on the podcast, or AFL or NRL. They've got access that no one else has, and I've really tried my best to retrain them to go, don't do the same match report. Don't do the same preview, because that's what AAP's doing. That's
exactly.
That's what ESPN and Fox, they're all doing that kind of stuff. But if you can produce content that someone else can't get, a really good example is the Melbourne Storm are in preseason, and the team walked all the way from Amy Park, right next to Rod Laver Arena, where the tennis is happening now, all the way out to the Dandenongs, and it was like a 14-hour walk, and they videotaped the whole way. And that content no one else has, so their fans absolutely ate it up. But you've really got to produce that content that is different to all the other media outlets. Otherwise, it's just same, and people will just pass it over.
Yeah, I mean, people, sometimes tweet me or email and say, I've got my power rankings here, or check out this report after the game, and I'm like, I want to be kind to them to say, why would anybody, read your power rankings when NBA.com, ESPN, CBS, they all have power rankings? They don't really mean anything. Like, give me something that I haven't read before or that I can't find anywhere else, because that's what's going to keep your interest. But again, that's a lesson that I learned early on as well. I contacted when I started doing writing. I don't really write anymore, but I had a blog and stuff like that, and I wrote to some newspaper reporters and stuff at the time, and they were the same. They're like, why would anyone read your report or recap? You're nobody. And in the nicest possible way, but at the same time, you don't want someone saying, oh yeah, you're going to be a superstar. You want people to be honest with you and upfront, and you need to bring something to the table that no one else is bringing, and that is what's going to separate you from other people.
Well, thank you very much. I could spend another hour talking about the bad boy Pistons era and what it's like to see Isaiah Thomas wandering down the hallways. I'm a big Isaiah fan as well, so I'm very jealous of that. But I'll be in the States in July, heading to Seed Conference in Miami. So maybe I'll stop by Atlanta on the way and check out everything NBA digital.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make the effort, I'll be here for sure. And I'm happy to take you to the studios, and you can have a look around there. So, it's one thing. I've had a few people actually. It's been good. We've had some visitors already come over, and I take everybody in the studio, and they all like to shoot a free throw and have a bit of a feel for it. So, if you're here, for sure.
All right. Thank you very much, mate.
My pleasure, Sean. Thanks.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Leigh Ellis from The Starters for joining me on the podcast. I just think, one, they're producing a quality product. They've persisted on it, so it's a great story for anyone trying to break into the sports business. You would have seen there, and there'll be links to Leigh's details to connect with him both on Twitter and LinkedIn, starting producing content, being a digital producer, getting some work on the show, developing your skills in multiple areas, writing, radio, those kind of things. So if you're looking to break into the business, it's a really good model. Again, follow the guys at Dream Team Talk, and they're following that same model. There'll be links to the Thousands Show where they go through some of the clips of their best pieces. And I guess the only thing that I can say is a testament to what they've done is the fact that the Starters have a page on Wikipedia. So that, to a certain degree, says that you've made it if you are on Wikipedia. So my next guest, I'm very lucky to get him. It is a very busy week at the Seattle Seahawks. They've got the NFC Championship game coming up this weekend versus the San Francisco 49ers to see who will get into the Super Bowl. I met Kenton Olsen at Seat Conference in Kansas City this year, and I was really impressed by a site that they've built around connecting the fans around the world. It's called imin.seahawks.com. And so I was lucky enough to get a little bit of Kenton's time to chat about that website and what they're planning and what it's like to be inside an NFL team as they prepare for an NFC Championship game. I'm very pleased to have a good friend of mine who I met at SEAT in Kansas City from the Seattle Seahawks and the Seattle Sounders. He's the Director of Digital Media and Emerging Media for both of those teams, and he's joined me on a very busy week with a big game coming up this weekend. Kenton Olsen, welcome to the Sports Geek Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I really wanted to touch base with you, and again, thanks for joining me on such a busy week. You've got this site, it's imin.seahawks.com, and it's really around engaging the Seahawks digital fans, the 12s, as you would call them. You want to give us a bit of background about the site and tell us a little bit more about the 12s?
Yeah, absolutely. So, taking a step back, we were lucky in the fact that we retired the number 12 after our fans many years ago, and so we commonly refer to our fans as 12s. And one amazing thing about our fan base is how widespread they are, literally around the world. I think there's been some games this year, such as I believe it was a Thursday night game down in Arizona, that we were lucky enough to win the game, and afterwards our fans literally kind of almost stormed the Thursday night football set, and we're down there cheering and chanting. So we have fans everywhere, and looking at moving to the playoffs, we really wanted to figure out a way, how can we kind of connect these fans with the team, as well as kind of show really how diverse the actual fan base is in terms of the location of them. So came up with this concept, around the building. Coach Carroll has kind of a philosophy and kind of a mentality that essentially all the players and coaches, tap in before they step out on the field, before they step out in the practice field, weight room, etc. And essentially it's all about tapping in and say, I am, putting all the distractions behind me. I'm focusing all of my time and effort on this opportunity in front of me. So if that opportunity is practice, a game, whatever it is, just putting everything aside and kind of really focusing in. So we thought, hey, let's give people a way to kind of tap in online. So that's kind of where the site came with. And essentially the way the site, functions is, a fan, simply goes to the website and they can tap in. It's a responsive website, so it works across desktop, tablet, and mobile devices. And essentially a user taps in, and if they're using a modern web browser, it will ask them for permission to use the location. If they say yes, it will plot them on a map, and in real time, you can see all the other kind of 12s around the world that are tapping in. So it's been pretty successful so far. We've had just under 70,000 people tap in now from over 100 countries. So it really shows how widespread and how excited our fans are for this playoff run.
And it really does bring the fans into the locker room. The fact that you're extending, what you just said there, that Coach Carroll is really pushing the I'm in, and the mentally tapping in to say I'm ready for practice, I'm ready for the game. You're sort of amping up the fans in that same way. So they want to show their support, and this is just allowing them to do it a whole way around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it's really inspiring. We have it on a TV / dashboard we have down in our office, and we've pretty much kept it running all throughout the course of the playoffs. We've had it running, and just walking by and on your way to and from our offices, and just seeing people tapping in from Australia, where you're from, or Russia or China or Antarctica, all over the world people are tapping in from, and they're all so excited about this great opportunity we have in front of us.
And I mean, the Seahawks are absolutely crazy and loud fans. I've seen earlier in the season you broke some records at CenturyLink, and I've been to a Seahawks game way back in the day when it was the Kingdome, and then I've been to the new stadium. Is that passion translating online? That volume and velocity and the passion translating online, especially going through the playoffs as it is now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just inspiring how many fans are talking about the Seahawks and are excited for the games moving forward. I have the social data in front of me right now, but we have literally hundreds of fans tweeting every couple minutes about the Seahawks during just the traditional work week. It's just absolutely phenomenal on game days and kind of right around big announcements. So it's people are excited here in Seattle, but as the site shows, people are excited all around the world.
And other things, part of it's a very busy week. What are the things that you're trying to focus on this week from a digital team point of view with these big games coming up?
Yeah, we have a couple of kind of pieces that we're focusing on. Obviously the I'm In site is a very big part of that. And I should have mentioned, there's a social component of this site as well. So fans are obviously asked to share the experience using Pound Tapped In, and we've gotten over 7,000 people share on social media already, which is great. Some other initiatives we've worked on here internally is there's a concept called Hawkitecture, which in the past was kind of, we were really looking for buildings across the area to kind of put up 12 flags, or to paint their buildings blue, or do all kinds of crazy stuff. And we actually had one building here in town that essentially turned off all the lights on their building and turned on the appropriate ones and formed a huge 12 on the side of the building. And if you look at the pictures, it literally changed our skyline, so it was really powerful. So we've extended that this week to personal architecture. So we're asking for fans to share their cubicles or offices or homes or man caves, whatever, how they've decorated their lives up using Seahawks, and kind of really showing their passion. In addition, we've just really have spent some added time and really focused on just kind of monitoring the social conversation, engaging with fans. So I think if you look at our Twitter feed for the past couple weeks, we've really spent a lot of time making sure that we're interacting with folks that are really showing their passion online and thanking them in a variety of ways. We've been interacting with people just by simple replies, and we've done some custom graphics. So we'll actually create some custom graphics that are kind of in our look and feel and send back to people. We've been using a program powered by Starbucks called Tweet a Coffee, where we can tweet someone a cup of coffee, and the nice thing is Starbucks are pretty much everywhere, so we can kind of get someone some instant gratification, for the most part, wherever they are. As well as, just kind of interacting with just the fans and making sure that, people know that we hear them and we're with them during this historic run.
Oh, terrific work. I just brought up the social stats for I'm In right now while we're chatting. You're approaching 25,000 Facebook interactions across likes and shares and comments, getting close to nearly 4,000 tweets. So terrific work, considering it's only been out, and really rallying around the playoff picture. I'm going to leave you there because I know it's an absolutely busy week. I look forward to catching up with you after a very successful NFL season, and then you roll into what will hopefully be a very successful MLS season with the Sounders.
Yeah, absolutely. We have the Super Draft this week. We announced some big moves already this week. Are constantly looking at building our team for next year, and have some cool stuff that we can talk about in the future for the Sounders planned.
Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. And where can people find you on the internet if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, you can follow myself, at Kenton O on Twitter. I'm definitely not the most prolific tweeter in the world, but, obviously follow the Seahawks and Sounders, and, my team does a really great job, and so that's a great way to follow everything Seahawks and Sounder related. They're just our primary accounts.
And also, if you didn't catch Kenton on the sports conference, the hashtag sports conference yesterday, you were on the panel engaging fans with social in stadium. Catch that replay. It's on the actual, we've got it on our site, sportsgeekhq.com/33. Those were fun to be part of, and people can watch that replay on our site.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun, and we had the lucky distinction of being the first panel. So it was, obviously some great conversation on the first one, and as it built throughout the day, it was really something special.
Okay, mate. Well, like I said, all the best for this week, and hopefully it's a really busy and successful next couple of weeks for you guys.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sean.
Are you following Sports Geek on Instagram? Follow Sports Geek HQ.
Thanks again to Kenton Olsen from the Seahawks and the Sounders. Very busy week as they prepare for the championship game. I'll be definitely tapping in and supporting the Seahawks this weekend. You can catch Kenton's panel discussion from the Hashtag Sports Conference in these show notes, as well as every single video is in a playlist in the show notes from episode 33, where there's a replay of my sports data and sports gaming panel. That sound you hear underneath me is the sounds of the game this week. I went to the victory game where they took on the Western Sydney Wanderers, and that's the sound you would hear after Archie Thompson scores a goal at Amy Park. This week's social media post of the week comes from the Aussie Open, from their Instagram account. A really good shot of Victoria Azarenka coming out of the shadows in one of her early round matches. Give them a follow on Instagram at Australian Open and be following the Oz Open hashtag. There's plenty of fans sharing content on Instagram, as Dan said in the podcast when we caught up with him on episode 30. That's the clock wind-up music that tells me to dedicate the show and get out and let you get back to your lives. Episode 34, being an NBA fan, as you will well know, like Leigh Ellis, nominations would be Charles Barkley, Hakeem Olajuwon, from MLB, pitcher Nolan Ryan. From an AFL point of view, the Crows' Ben Hart. But this episode I'm going to dedicate to Chicago Bears running back Walter Payton. And show notes, you can find them at sportsgeekhq.com/34. Just put the number on the end and you can get the show notes from any episode. Once again, as I said on the last episode 33, podcasts are now being uploaded to SoundCloud as well as iTunes and Stitcher. So sportsgeekhq.com/SoundCloud and you'll be able to find them. If you can leave a review on either iTunes or Stitcher and give it a rating, I'd very much appreciate it. And as we have the Sports Business Night at Honey Bar next Tuesday, grab your tickets at sportsgeekhq.com/SB night. And yes, I have confirmed that the Honey Bar does have air conditioning, so you will be able to escape the Melbourne heatwave. So my closing 2 cents. You want to break into the world of sports business, you have to remember the second part, business.
Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. Find all Sports Geek podcasts at sportsgeekhq.com/SGP. Want to maximize returns from your digital team? Contact Sports Geek about content and commercialization workshop. Thanks for listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.